Okay, hello everybody. Happy Sunday morning. Welcome to Creative Coalition. So just to clarify some things, like we are not an official union panel, but we do have people from the union here. We're just it's mostly about talking about how various like creative disciplines and cross disciplines, how we can work together to work back against the current like generative AI threat. So this panel is mostly about that. So we have these wonderful panelists here, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, like starting from Dina.
Hi, I'm Dina Eigelsrud. I'm the co-chair of the Legislative Action Committee for the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, but my husband is also an illustrator in the Art Directors Guild, and that's me.
Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Yee. My bio is going to be so long now, okay. I am mostly a writer and actor, but I have done many other things as well. So you see there. I started very young. I've been in this entertainment industry since I was a kid. My first paying job was when I was 6 years old. And I mostly did film and television acting as well as musical theater acting. And then I had a moment where I was in a failed 90s boy band called Youth Asylum.
You look fantastic though.
Thank you. Blonde hair, I look great. And we had like a #1 hit on the Disney Channel and then were never heard from again. I then went on to do about 10 years of musical theater. I was a Broadway chorus boy with Wicked, Mamma Mia, Mary Poppins. And then most recently I've moved here. I do stand up, not so much during the pandemic, but that is my latest album, Gay Songs for Straight People, because straight people need gay songs too. As well as a television writer, I've written on Haley's On It, which is on Disney. I'm still acting as well, but SAG is still on strike, so I'm not going to promote that show, but it is the show with Haley Steinfeld. Not the one that you're thinking of, the other one. And then also I've written for shows on Warner Brothers, or for Hulu and Netflix. So basically I'm part of 6 unions, so I coalition with myself too. So that's me.
There are many sides to a person, and Kevin is all of them. And then we have Tiffy.
Sorry, I said no.
Oh, no worries about it.
Hi. So my name is Tiffy Wang. I am a color designer with TAG. I also worked with Kevin on Haley's On It. I worked on season 7 of Rick and Morty and a bunch of other stuff, I guess. And then I was also color key for the first season of Hello, Boss, if anyone knows that one.
You were also a script coordinator, right?
No, I was also, I was a supervising editor for a live action short film that just got into the Zed Festival, y'all.
Yay.
It's called Bloody Buddy Coda. Please go watch it. Thank you.
Okay. And then for last, we have Sam.
Hi everybody, my name is Sam Tong. I'm a storyboard artist with the Animation Guild and with the Art Directors Guild. What am I supposed to say? I've worked, recently I've been working on Metroid Prime 4 for Nintendo and the Twister sequel for Universal. Other stuff that's coming out, I worked on an Apple A24 TV show called Sunny with Rashida Jones. That'll be coming out hopefully next year. And X-Men 97, which should also be coming out soon. So storyboard, if they're paying for me to draw storyboards, I'll go draw some storyboards for them.
Yeah, awesome. So, continuing to that, Dina, what has been your experience with, what's up to your experience with like politics and like coalition building? Like, it seems to be a bit of a blurry role. I think not a lot of people here know about. Do you mind telling us a bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. Would you mind actually just pulling back my slide? Because I had some stuff.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff on it.
I know, there's a lot on there. Yeah. So I work in politics, but I've had the opportunity to build coalitions to get resolutions and policies and different kinds of legislation passed and adopted. But for AI, there's some things I think we need to be thinking about for a coalition to actually build. So we need to think about how do people outside the creative industries think about generative AI. 60% of the people know that it's a threat, but only 28% think that it's going to affect them directly. So we need to build support for our issue by bringing it to as many other groups along with us as we can. We need people to see themselves in our fight. So people could mention things like Goldman Sachs issued a report back in March that said 300 million jobs were going to be lost due to generative AI. That's roughly the entire population of the United States. It's not a small number. I mean, that's worldwide, but it's kind of important. It's also good to give real-world examples that people can relate to everyone's held a magazine before. So we talk about like Cosmopolitan magazine, the first cover of, Cosmopolitan magazine that came out last year. OpenAI got together with ChatGPT, and one woman in 100 hours could actually create the cover of that magazine, but what's important to pay attention to are all the jobs that were lost: models, hairstylists, makeup artists, on-set people, camera people, lighting people, set security, but then also the caterers, and how does that expand into the extended economy? So those are kind of things, and that's just one image in one magazine. Everybody is a potential ally because everybody has a job that can be replaced. So literally, we need to be talking to the other artists, but we also need to be talking to everyone else too. Another important thing to always remember is to speak to how people hear, meaning what is their frame of reference? How does the issue matter to them? So some examples might be if you're talking to union members, you talk to them about how AI affects the specific job tasks in their particular category. If not enough people are working, can the union itself keep itself afloat? If you're a driver, taxis, semi-autonomous vehicles in general, long-haul drivers, the Port of Long Beach, there's no longer any people in the Port of Long Beach that are unloading the actual ships that are coming into the port. Grocery workers, you have Amazon Fresh stores that have now been replaced. There are only 1 or 2 people in the store. You can talk to them about how it's affecting every single group. Women's groups, 79% of working women are in occupations susceptible to AI disruption compared to 58% of working men. So if you're talking to someone who's in a women's group, you talk to them about how's this going to impact the gender gap in hiring. Environmentalists, AI uses more water than a nuclear reactor to keep servers cool. That's a monumental waste of energy. So find people where they're at and talk to them about the issue where they're at. Holiday season's coming up. So it's a great time to socialize and talk to all the people in your family who you wouldn't even think necessarily know about art or care about art, and meet them there. And if you want to move politicians on the issue, it's important to find commonality with big groups, many groups of people. Big tech here in the United States, at least, has about 20 lobbyists per legislator. We have us, we have the people. And it's the only way you're going to overcome corporate greed like that is with a very large population of varied groups, pushing people from several sectors, pushing back, and all saying no together. So if you can speak to politicians, hear how they hear, talk to them about the economy, talk to them about the ripple effects and job losses in their constituencies that they represent. I have a petition to President Biden. It's got about 27,000 signatures so far saying that artists and creators need to be included in the conversations to regulate AI. So that's kind of what I think. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dina. Yeah, Dina has been around for a long time. She's worked with many different groups and just try to help them to work together, sort of like the glue between all these groups. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Dina. Okay. So for Kevin, Kevin, recently, I know you've been part of the WGA, and the WGA recently, they ratified their deal with the studios. What do you think were some of the wins for the WGA, and how do you think that they managed to achieve that?
Oh, well.
Say what you can.
No, I knew this was going to be the question, and it's such a big topic.
Yeah, for sure.
We got basically movement on most things that we wanted, which was a huge win. And with AI, I think it was one of the things we were talking about was crediting writers, because with streaming, the push was to make everything cheaper. But as Dina was talking about, same with a magazine, you can't make a show just like TikTok. You can't just put a camera to someone's face. There's a cameraman, there's a second AD, there's gaffers, there's all these people that need to make these shows. And so it's an expensive thing to make. And so with AI, it really was, can AI write scripts? And at this point, it can't. They've tried and it's not there yet. But it could get to the point where it will. So we do have that recognition that AI, that a human has to write the scripts, and that there is still language in there where AI could be used in the future, but right now we don't know where that's going to lead. So, yeah.
I mean, throughout the strike, right, there has been a lot of cases where, obviously the end goal I guess the execs are to use AI to replace people in those productions, right? So what are some of the things that they think that AI can replace?
I mean, the biggest thing here in America, which isn't everywhere in the world, but was writers' rooms, and the amount of people in a writers' room is usually over 6 to 8. They've been at, like, back in the days, it was like 14 people or something like that, and it was there's like levels to it, so it really was to train writers to be able to write, and so you needed people on lower levels to go up to the higher level so that they could become showrunners. And it really was this idea, can we cut out a lot of the writers so it's maybe 1 or 2 writers? And that still is kind of the conversation and kind of where the language has landed. They still are regulating much smaller writers' rooms now with this deal, and we are seeing now writers' rooms that were already in production before the strike actually being cut already, because now the language says we need these many people, and so the orders have been smaller of episodes, and they're just cutting writers out of the writers' room. So we're already seeing how the studio loopholes work and how they will utilize those things. But I'm also a SAG member, and with that, one of the biggest fights with that, and I don't even know if it would be considered AI at this point, but it was the scanning of people's likenesses and using it in perpetuity, and we actually saw it. There's a viral clip, I don't know if people have seen it, on this movie Prom Pact, where they did that, where they did a row of of people in the back, but the front are all background actors that are real. And this was another thing about woman percentage. It's like the front people that were working and that were paid to be there were white, and all of the computer generated people were POC. So you see how they kind of are trying to cut and trim just across the board in entertainment right now to kind of alleviate their screwing up streaming. It really just started because they don't know how to monetize streaming, and so they are essentially trying to fight the workers that are making it, and not just the artists. I will say, in the coalition conversation that we're having, one of the biggest reasons why I think the WGA and SAG hopefully SAG, but WGA got the deal was because right away we had solidarity. Right away, SAG was on the line with me day one, and I am a SAG member too. But it was also IATSE and the Teamsters. The Teamsters were really instrumental in getting us the deal because they shut down shoots. Because they have in their union contract that they don't have to cross picket lines. So if we threw up a picket line, they would not cross it, and that filming would not happen. And without that solidarity, I think we wouldn't have gotten that deal. But to Dina's point, Teamsters are the truck drivers. Teamsters are the day workers. They're the caterer. IATSE is the caterers. These are all the people working. It's not just the artists. We all know that we're being shut out because of corporate greed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah. Woo! And hopefully SAG can also see the loopholes that are currently being exploited and amend that in their own agreement, seeing what's going on with the writers. Yeah. Okay, on to Tiffy. So Tiffy's relatively new in the industry, so I'm really curious about your perspective about how AI has affected you, or what do you think of, given what's going on, given that you're relatively new to the industry?
So, I don't really, with what I've been seeing with the animation industry right now isn't so much, jobs aren't being lost yet, ultimately, right? It hasn't fully, because even though the studios are creating their own generative AI programs, we aren't seeing such a huge backlash quite yet, because we know for sure that those programs aren't sophisticated enough to take our jobs yet. But being color design, and also being in a department that has historically been color design comes from the ink and paint department, right? So historically, it's affected women and now non-binary people. Mostly AFABs, non-binary people are within the color design department. And so one of the things that I remember being talked to about was a lot of people tend to think oh, color design is easily replaceable. So I've even had people speak to me and been like, oh yeah, you guys will probably be replaced first, right? Which is, I can't even say, like, that's so insulting. Like, thanks for looking down on my whole career. But ultimately, what I really want to say is, and this speaks to Dina and Kevin's point as well, is ultimately it's about the labor, right? It's about labor theft. These studios and these corporations, ultimately what they're looking to do is replace human labor, because human labor costs money. But the thing is, if you look at, sorry, I had a whole thing. I'm nervous. It's early. I'm not a good public speaker. Thank you.
No worries.
Ultimately, like, what I'm trying to say is that it's gonna steal jobs. And living in a capitalist society, we need money. People don't think about the crews that are behind everything you guys watch, right? Like, when you think about live action, when you think about animation, everyone's looking at, either like the director, the voice actors, the producer, right? They never look at the actual crew that's behind it, the hundreds of people, the thousands of people that are behind it. We don't think about the caterers. We don't think about the drivers. We don't think about, the PAs. We don't think about all the people running around and all those jobs that are gonna affect. There's a reason why the SAG and WGA strikes shut down LA. And that's because there was no productions going on. There was nothing, the studios weren't paying out. And ultimately, what we don't want is that to happen to our industries. For all the newbies, for all the people that are trying to get into the entertainment industry in general, like I don't care, live action, animation, doesn't matter. There's room here for everybody, but there's not room here anymore if the corporations of the studios are just replacing us. So, it's important to come together as people and as labor to fight this, to say no, like, we are valuable. Our job is valuable. Our labor is valuable. And I see that especially within the animation industry with a lot of newbies, where people are just kind of happy to be here and they don't see the value with their work. I mean, you see that with veterans too, with veterans within the industry. People who are just happy to be here. And while it's good that we have a job that we love, and while I'm thankful to do the job that I love and get paid to do it, that labor is still valuable. That labor should still be paid for. Art shouldn't just be, a lot of these companies, a lot of these press releases, they say like, to the consumer, to the consumer. We've stopped calling ourselves customers. They've stopped calling their audiences. They stopped calling them customers. They're calling everyone consumers now. It's the complete dehumanization of labor and of the people that they serve, right? The people that watch and consume their fandoms, the IP that they create. So ultimately, it's about humanizing ourselves, our worth, and not just in terms of our labor, but also us as people and us as an audience. So yeah, that's my little soapbox.
I mean, you also see in a way where they start to call everything content, right? We're just content creators now, and how like, we just make content, whatever that means, right? Content is a big gray box.
Yeah, they don't even call us. I think with Netflix, there was a huge thing a while back where they listed everybody for one show that was like as content creators instead of as directors or writers or anything.
Spielberg is a content creator.
Was it HBO? Okay, I thought, I'm sorry, Netflix. It was HBO. So it's the idea of like not even calling us artists or creatives or writers or directors anymore. It's like, y'all are just content creators and this is content for consumers. Like how sterile does that sound? How scary does that sound?
I mean, the fact that they didn't list Martin Scorsese as a director, he was a content creator, that's disgusting. And it was despicable. And the fact of the matter is they actually had to actively work to take everyone's names off the titles. There was some serious thought in that. And they said, it's just an accident, but it wasn't an accident.
Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah, your skill just gets like, your skill it just gets crossed out, and you just get reduced to a single line thing, and then that's what we don't want, right?
Yeah, it's like value your skill. Like the skill that we put into the years and time that we put into bettering our skill and bettering ourselves as artists, as creatives, into work. Like ideas come from people. They don't come from machines. The machines spit out whatever we put in. Ultimately, like, you know, value your own creations, people. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, something I heard, I think, on the SAG strikes that I thought was a very succinct way to put it was like, it doesn't matter if we have fun jobs. Like, if your labor creates wealth, you deserve a share of that wealth, right? It doesn't matter if you are the taste tester at the ice cream factory. Like, you're making money for the ice cream company, so like, get that bag, dude. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Secure the bag.
Secure the bag.
Yeah, man, you need a bag to pay rent. Like, come on.
But can I add
Oh, yeah,
that
of
I think
course.
it's a societal shift though, because as I was coming up as an actor and I would take acting classes, people told me to be grateful for everything, for every little job, and to take every single job, but there was never a time that they taught me that there was a shift where my art deserved money and deserved to be paid, and we, I think, need to teach that as well as being grateful, and as well as all that.
I just wanted to add one thing. Workers are wealth creators. It's not the other way. It's not not job providers and we work for them. Workers are wealth creators. They're getting wealthy because you're working for them. It's your labor. So, yeah.
And just to add to that, before we get to Sam,
This is a method, you know?
Like how me and,
dude, I
me
love
and
those
Kevin
happening.
reached
Anyways.
for the microphone at the same time.
but that if you don't understand what your art is worth, greedy corporations do, and they're the ones monetizing it.
They don't exist without us.
Basically, like, art. So this goes back a long way, right? Like, commercial artists have always been like chronically undervalued and overexploited, right? Goes back to the way of like Lion Decker illustrations. Like, all of his illustrations make those ad companies like bank, and he was rich for his time. And now, like you said, there's a gradual shift, right, where we get told that we should be grateful for our jobs, we should be grateful to be here. And my retort is, I can have two opinions. I can be grateful and still want to get money. Like, and this seems to be like a problem, like you're saying, like, people are happy to be here, and yes, people should be happy to be here, but also get that bag.
Yeah.
And on to Sam. Like, Sam, as a member of like multiple units yourself, right? Can you tell us a bit more about like the, I guess, potential like cross-discipline impacts that this could have that you've seen?
So this sort of like dovetails, I think, nicely out of what Kevin was saying about the writer's room minimums. Like, when I was starting out, one of the first movies that I worked on was this Blake Lively shark movie called The Shallows. And it's a pretty fun little shark, like 80-minute shark movie, right? And I was helping out the storyboard department, kind of like taking all these storyboards from like top live action storyboard guys and like formatting them so they could be cut into an animatic and stuff like that. And like, that's how I learned, right? But I think what sort of Kevin was speaking to with staffing minimums, and we're gonna see this in art departments in live action, art departments in animation. It's not necessarily that like AI is going to do all the jobs, but AI can be used to justify this sort of like austerity politics, right? I think it's not unlike, I think the translation industry has seen a lot of problems with this too, where like, because Google Translate exists, they don't want to pay a translator. They say, oh, well, like the Google Translate will do 90% of it. And like any good translator who actually speaks the language will tell you like, yeah, but I have to fix it all. Like, it's not actually less work, right? And so I think there's a risk of that happening, certainly in animation, in live action, art departments, like this sort of contraction of the field, because people say, oh, you can use AI to get 70% of the way there. And it's like, well, can you really? But like, that's what they're going to tell you is going to happen. And then it's, I think, going to really impact junior artists, right? Guys who, like me, were trying to get started and learn from these older artists, and it's like, they're not going to find room in the budget for, like, a kid to format all the storyboards, right? What else were we talking about? I've lost my train of thought.
Well, I mean, I think it's like, you're part of the ADG, right? And obviously, ADG ratified their deal kind of early. Like, I'm kind of wondering, like, what, obviously, there's been conversations about AI too. Like, do they think about how is it going to affect them or the production of the crew?
Yeah, really good question. Yeah. So I think one thing that, like, as I've been working on this with Animation Guild and with Art Directors Guild and talking to other members of my union is how important education is going to be on this, right? Because I think a lot of us are busy and a lot of us maybe haven't totally had our finger on the pulse of this, or maybe people think it won't affect them, or maybe they think that it will benefit them, right? And so something that I've run into a lot and been working on a lot with members of my unions who are activated on this is trying to educate other members to see what those threats are, right? I think that there's people who maybe are looking at where this product or this software is today and not necessarily thinking about where it's going to be in 5 years or 7 years, right? I think there's, and so understanding that is like kind of an educational hurdle, right? Seeing like, okay, well, like maybe you think you're safe today, but it's gonna come for you. I think there's also like arguments you can make to your fellow artists, your fellow union members who maybe think that they won't be affected, that like suddenly will turn that light bulb on. Like, and I think Dina, I think you alluded to this a little bit, but if like all of the illustrators get laid off, suddenly that's quite a few union hours that are not paying into like healthcare and pension that everybody relies on, right? There are these sort of like ripple effects as like parts of this body die, right? And as you said, like speak to other people's interests, figuring out like how to communicate not only how is AI going to affect me as an illustrator, but how is it going to affect other crafts and other jobs is really important.
Can you go a bit more into about how the union hours affect everybody else's? And maybe
Oh,
not
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
here is a
sorry,
part of
this
the
is
union.
like fiddly union detail politics. I realize not everybody here maybe is like, has broken into one of like the major unions or something like that. The way that it works is that when you are hired on a project, right, like a TV show or whatever, the studio not only pays your rate, right, you get paid for your hours that you are drawing pictures or whatever, they're also paying like sort of a premium to the unions on that, and that goes into a big pile of money called the Motion Picture Industry Healthcare and Pension Plan, and that's the fund that's drawn on for how we all get healthcare, right? And so it's really important because in this industry, which is all sort of like gig to gig, project to project, it allows you to stay on your healthcare in between those projects, right? And if that pile of money gets smaller because we're suddenly like not hiring anyone to make these movies, that's gonna be a real big problem. Because sometimes you need to go to the doctor, right? Like that's the thing that you should be able to do. So yeah, does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, it does,
Yeah.
and I think it really speaks to the importance of how like we have to support each other, right? Because you're all part of this big body, and everybody pays into the collective like pension and healthcare.
Yeah.
So if like again, like you were saying, if people just don't have jobs, then that pool becomes less, and everybody else has to do with less, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Sorry, just to speak on that as well. I know it's going to like union politics, but also your job classification determines how much goes into your pension as well. So basically, like if certain jobs start going away, not only does it limit the hiring pool, but it also limits the ability for others to contribute to that pension. That makes sense.
I mean, you can imagine like a nightmare scenario where they reclassify all our jobs, right? There's like, you could be like a junior illustrator or a senior illustrator, or you could be like an AI-assisted illustrator, and like that, you get paid the least, and it pays the least in the pension, and guess what? That's what everybody is now.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
that
Like you edit, like, oh yeah, your job is just to edit the AI stuff. We don't need you to do like real, like we don't need you to paint or do anything at all. It's just like whatever, like, or prompters. Like I know some studios were putting out job description or job ads for like AI prompters or something like that. And so it's like, yeah, you get paid a high rate. They'll like lure you in with that higher rate of like, oh, if you're agreed to work with AI for us, we'll pay you higher. But then within the union and stuff, that job classification might not necessarily on the back end be paying you those things that other traditional artists would normally be getting. So like, yeah. Ultimately, it's your pension contribution, it's your contribution to your hours and stuff. Like studios determine that. Studios determine what goes into your pension and your healthcare insurance. So that's kind of scary too.
That's pretty interesting because Microsoft is working on a tool that actually helps people with their prompts. So there's not even going to be a job anymore. So you're just, again, like everybody's saying here, you're just looking at the really short term. You don't look at stuff, how it affects everybody else and yourself for the future. And I think that's the key part here, right?
Yeah, I mean, companies really only look at things so much as like quarterly earning reports, right? They only look at things within 5-year spans of 5 years. Like their contracts usually span within 5 years. So it's really short term. It's not long term at all. They don't. But whereas we're trying to create a career which is long term. So yeah.
And on that note, like we've talked a lot about trying to persuade other people and trying to get these conversations started. And recently, a lot of people have been trying to anaphoratize AI, have been trying to say that AI learns like a human, all those type of things. But words matter, and Dina is here to tell us why.
So there's some more accurate terms to kind of untangle what these AI companies and their propaganda and spin are being used to promote their AI products. So we tell people, don't take the phrases that sort of humanize it. So don't call AI a tool. It's not a tool. It's a replacement technology. Don't say AI artist or prompt engineer. Say AI user or prompt plagiarist. Don't say AI creates or makes. It's not a living thing. Instead, say AI generates. It outputs. Don't say AI art or AI wrote. Say AI generated image or AI generated text. It's not a living being. It doesn't learn. It doesn't think. It doesn't ingest. It's supplied with data. And so you always have to make sure to keep putting it in the technical. And the other thing that's always really important is just remind people AI would not be able to output anything if it wasn't filled with stolen data from all of these talented people.
Do you think that there's a better way to sort of like have this sort of terms to be more well-known or more well-spread among people that you talk to? Because right now, even the newspapers, they're using things like AI learns or AI writes or like AI is whatever. And are there better ways you think that people can learn more about this sort of thing for themselves? Anybody?
Okay.
I mean, I think this kind of goes back to what we've been saying about talking to other artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so much of my knowledge and education on this has come from talking to other people who have, hey, like you really need to read this paper, or like this is a really good article, or you need to follow what this ethicist or software engineer or artist is saying on Twitter. And so speaking to each other is how we can sort of like share this knowledge and kind of get on the same page about this stuff. Yeah, that's what I would say.
It seems almost beneficial to even have somebody who's like, they're really good at TikTok, and they make like good TikTok shorts, right? Like something like that. I think that could help quite a bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's people who are like very much at the forefront of this that are worth like following and listening to. Like Timnit Gebru is really great. Steve Zapata is really, really great. Carla Ortiz is really great. Like John Lamb, who put this panel together, is great. Ben Chow is worth following, right? So there are these I think there are leaders in this space who are at the cusp of this, and like following them and figuring out how to like get involved with what they're doing is really great, and the way to sort of like learn more and educate yourself, and then that can like sort of like this slide that we've got like can enable you to speak to these points and arm you with like arguments to dismantle common things that you'll hear.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would just say, it's really hard, like at first, like even me, when I would start to write stuff like on Facebook and comment, and you're like, oh wait, no, I'm saying it again, it's a lie, damn.
Yeah.
Like, because their marketing is really good. And so if you really want to combat it, it takes a little while to sort of adjust your brain about it, but once you pick it up, it's like, oh yeah. And then you can see when other people do it, and
We can use
just
better
pass the word
language
along.
about it, and yeah.
Better language.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just moving so fast. I will say, like, I learned most about AI, how it's affecting SAG and WGA through the strike. I didn't even know that because it was like, actually, I feel like right at the beginning, people were talking about AI for WGA stuff, and I had never experienced that in a room. And I think that even the studios didn't fully understand yet. They just wanted to use that tool, whatever it was, and now they realize, like, correct me if I'm wrong, like AI is not copyrighted material, right?
No, it's just filled with stolen copyrighted
It's stolen
material.
copyrighted material. So an AI cannot be copyrighted material. So then the studios, I think one of the conversations was, the studios was suddenly like, oh, well then we can't own this IP because it's not copyrighted. So imagine if AI had come up with Mickey Mouse and Disney couldn't own that IP. So suddenly they're like, oh, wait, we need to talk about, we do need to regulate this. And it's like, okay. And then with SAG, like my last show that I was on was 2021 and no one scanned a body. Like I feel like that was within the past year, so it moves so fast that you just have to be on it and hear what people are saying.
Which is why, like, I think, like what Sam is saying right there, a few key people to follow, because honestly, everything moves really fast. So, but those people are always on top of things, and you'll be able to find out and at least keep yourself informed the best that you can by following like key people within, you know, this fight, basically. Yeah. This needs to stop like going to blue screen. Yeah. Okay, so like, as an individual, even as a group, like sometimes, you know, you're not part of a union, or maybe, you know, you're just an individual, you're like a new artist and you're not really sure what to do. Like, these are some of the actions that we kind of collectively thought about what you can do even to like support artists' work, support labor. The big one that we kind of wanted to talk about was amendments to contracts. Like, what are some of the things that even between unions that you can try to bring up in so that we don't, you know, we don't step on other people's like other disciplines basically when we're trying to fight for our own rights.
I guess one of the things that I would say is there's 375 separate IATSE locals. So the real trick is getting all of them to sort of push in their own individual contracts towards one thing. There's 13 main locals in that sort of set the agenda for everybody else. But I think that if you can get the electricians and the artists to see that virtual production is going to replace everyone together, unified, that's how you get it in the big ask. That would be my big tip.
Oh, just to add to the actions, I've been seeing a lot of people online whenever there's like AI images pop up or whatever, or like people are trying to pass off AI images as their own work. I've been seeing a lot of people in the comments saying like, this is AI, this wasn't created. And honestly, that's something that we as, you know, people who don't have like, just on a general day-to-day basis that we can do, right? We can call these things out when we see it and be like, hey, that's not, this wasn't done by a person, this was done by AI. And creating that awareness, I think, and spreading that also, I mean, it's a grassroots thing, right? Like, ultimately, it comes from the people. It's whatever is accessible to you. And nowadays, especially in America, like, everybody has a phone. Everybody has social media. When you see it, call it out.
I never thought that I would come around to being like, yeah, posting is actually activism, but it is. And so much I think of being able to fight AI is going to be controlling public opinion on this, right? That because people will listen to that, right? Companies listen to that, and politicians listen to that. Nobody wants bad press, right? So this is something like very easy that you can do, right? If you see AI, especially if you see it used on a video game or a TV show or something like that, like be in the comments section of that article, right? Like saying that it sucks, because studios read that and respond to that. Like, I don't think that Disney was thrilled with the response to the Secret Invasion credits, right? If you see something, say something, and like, dude, I'm already on Twitter all day. Like you are too. I know you are, right? Like, so yeah, call it out, right? Keep pushing that public opinion.
And I also think, going back to the strike, it's like, I saw so much solidarity. It wasn't just us, and it wasn't just the entertainment industry. When I was on the strike line last week, the nurses were there. And we go out to the nurses strike, we go out to the auto union strike. It's just like, they do listen, and they do, like the studios and the corporations see us in numbers, but it's very easy to find a picket. So go picket.
Right, yeah, if you're not in LA, right? I know people come in from all over the country and all over the world to Lightbox. Like, I know it doesn't like seem as one-to-one as like, oh, I'm a member of the Animation Guild and I can da-da-da-da, but like, if you live in another part of the country and the teachers are on strike, like, you can go support that strike, and then when you need a hand from them, like, that teachers union may have your back, and that's a bunch of people who, like, you know, that's good, right? That's what you want.
Yeah, don't let the corporations, don't let the studios control that narrative for you. Define it for yourselves. Define it for us. Define it for us as humans.
Yep, on that note, the U.S. Copyright Office is asking for comments around AI and copyright issues. The deadline is November 15th. This is your chance to say things directly to government. They want to hear you, so yeah, go for it. As well, like, in this really uncertain time, that, like new and experienced artists are, we're all facing like uncertainty around our jobs and things like that. Like, what are some of the things that you kind of want to tell people to, like, what do we do in the face of such adversity? What do we do?
Well, I just want to say, like, all of you guys, anyone who's an artist, the fact that you're willing to stand up for what it is that you do, you're all freaking heroes. You are all brave people. It's so important for people to stand up and say something. You're all creators. This is not really what you want to do. You want to be drawing, you want to be acting, you want to be coloring, you want to be whatever it is that you do. And like, to take the time out of your day and all come together to support one another is amazing. So you're heroes.
I am a hero. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, what I said earlier was what I was going to say, so I'll just say it again. That, like, basically, we need to be grateful, but we also need to understand that other people will monetize our gratitude and not to be railroaded, first of all. Like, very important, our art is worth something. I'm not saying at the beginning, you definitely have to pay your dues and get to a certain point, but then at a certain point, you should be making the money. And then I will just say, as an artist, I always create in the way, and this is my way of going, like, we don't always have control about the world, clearly, right? And we can be mad about a lot of things, but people are gonna be shitty. That's just the truth, right? So I always create art in a way that I believe I wanna see the world changed. So if I want more POCs and queer people in television, which is what I very much do and want, I write in that way. So I pitch in that way, I tell stories in that way. On Haley's On It, my biggest success was that I added 5 queer characters, and I just like wrote them in the script and was like, fight me. And they added 5 characters, so it's like,
amazing.
As long as you can just
confirm.
Yeah. So it really is just like create, if you feel hopeless, create art in the way that you would want to see the world to change, and that is your power.
I guess I would say that, like, it can seem really daunting, but I would really encourage you to try to find a space to get involved in. Like, we do not have to resign ourselves to a future where the only job is the mundane checking of AI outputs, right? Like, it is something you can control. Like, the reason that we have weekends is because there were labor fights, right? And if you can, like, educate yourself a little bit on the history of organized labor. Like, the fights were very bloody, and ours probably won't have to get that rough. But, find a way to get involved, and people will be happy to have you, right? And happy to help you do the work, right? Because we need a lot of people to help. So get involved, and you'll feel a lot better too, right? Like, we all get into this line of work because we love stories and we love heroes and we love characters, and your favorite character from a Miyazaki film or from a comic book, like, got off their butt and did something, and you should dig deep and do that too, and you'll feel a lot better if you do. I promise. I really, really, really do.
Don't forget the humanity behind of why we create, right? Like, as creatives, as artists, the reason why we create, the reason why we, like, every piece we put out there, every poem we write, every screenplay, every story we tell, every art piece that we paint or draw or whatever, there's a little bit of us in each piece that we put out, right? So, and ultimately, why do we as people do that? It's trying to communicate that moment, that feeling that we were in, that headspace we were in with other people. Ultimately, it's about communication, right? Like, humans trying to communicate with humans. There's a reason why art has been around for millennia, right? Like, humans, from the minute that people could pick up, that humans could start, like, cave paintings. Cave paintings was a form of communication. Ultimately, what we're doing is a form of human communication. So don't forget that. Don't forget, like, why we create, why we do it. Isn't obviously like because of the world we live in, you know, secure the bag, of course, but don't forget the humanity of it. Don't forget that part. Don't forget the heart. Don't forget the heart. Be a hero. Have heart.
Be the shonen hero you always wanted to
Yes. Be your inner magical girl.
be. Yeah. Thank you for all those wonderful words. That was absolutely awesome. Okay, you need to stop doing this. And now we have some time for Q&A. If anybody has questions, please feel free to line up to the mic, and we'll go. I'm gonna flip to the next slide. It's just
Talk
like a list
to
of
us.
resources.
It's like kind of fun to have a little microphone.
Oh yeah.
So hi. I was gonna ask about sort of like, cause on social media, like that's a huge way now. Artists are like making their mark and getting discovered, getting jobs. But now we're having to worry about how social medias are feeding our posts into those AI generative machines. So my question is, do you know what social medias are doing that, who aren't, who might in the future, that type of thing?
They all are.
They all are? Okay, cool, great. Cool.
I will say for like 2D art-wise, Kara, the app, they're strictly against AI art. But as of right now, like AI art detectors are very notoriously unreliable. I would say if you have 2D based media, I would highly suggest glazing your work or even like using nightshade when it comes out, just to protect, for images anyway, protect your images against like scraping. For text-based stuff, I don't think there's any way to do that, unfortunately. But as ChatGPT is saying, right? They've gotten a lot of ABO type stuff showing. Exactly. So again, you can ruin what they want to output by typing in nonsense, and have fun with that.
I actually wanted to say one other thing about Zoom. So Zoom had their change of terms of service last summer, and so they now have their AI assistant, and so it basically takes your image, your voice, and everything that's said in your meeting, and it's putting that into data sets because they've already scraped everything off the internet. There's nothing left, and so now they're having to monetize data in every app that you interact with, so expect they're going to be taking everything.
So in that vein, like, would you say to just, if you're gonna post, just start glazing everything, or like that's that basically all we can do?
I don't know if you're old enough to remember the AIDS epidemic, but like treat it like a condom, wrap that rascal, put the glaze on everything.
One other, like, so this is like the lazy glaze. One other thing you might be able to try, and this may be more of a stopgap, but if you don't have access to glaze or something like that, you might format everything in a PDF, like all of your images, right? Like you could use Speaker Deck or something like that, and because I suspect they're probably mostly scraping JPEGs, PNGs, those file formats. So if everything's in a PDF, it might be at least inconvenient. But then you'll want to host it, right, like on a personal site or a blog or something like that.
Do you think that there might be a place for like ethical AI, like maybe there's like a database of artists that sign up and then they get paid whenever there's like an image created, or maybe the AI is not coming like top down, or like writers decide to use it, or artists decide, okay, I might want to like use this, or is there a place like that for AI?
Multiple people can answer this question.
Oh, that's a loaded one. All right, I'm gonna take a crack at it. I think there could be a situation where artists, as long as they're getting paid for it, that they can contribute to a database for AI to contribute from. The issue is that these programs, generative AI, require infinite amount of data, right? Like once they scrape one thing, we're done. Like it's done with. It's already there, and it starts compounding on itself, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, generative AI it's like, at least in the terms of visual arts, it's like collaging, right? Like you're just taking bits and pieces of other people's work and creating a thing with it. So at a certain point, it's going to reach a level where, like, unless everybody is like, and this kind of goes back to like how these programs are made in the first place, right? Like they have people from developing countries looking over like all these different images. Like people have like, from looking at the worst things on the internet, they have PTSD. They've developed mental health disorders, right? Like, and these companies haven't paid these people at all. So it kind of goes back into the whole like, to create, is it even ethical to have artists create that database because it's going to turn into like a sweatshop environment, right? Where like you have to output however much like at a certain point, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe someone is expected to generate 50 images in like 2 hours. Like what do you do? Is it just stick figures at that point? So like I guess in a perfect world, sure, if people are getting paid for it, but in a realistic world, in a pragmatic sense, kind of not really, because we can't. Think about it. Generative AI scraped the whole internet, like the whole internet. The content on the internet was created by people through years and years and years and years of just people posting stuff on the internet, making stuff, creating stuff, putting it out there. So if they were able to consume all of that in like what, like a year or so, like it's just, you can't force people in a sweatshop environment to create things just to generate these databases. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like a volume problem, right? Mm-hmm. Like theoretically, sure, if you had like consent and compensation and transparency with these data sets, like could you have a ethical AI model that you used? Like, sure, theoretically, yes. Given where the technology is now, my understanding is that it just takes way too much stuff, and there's just not enough stuff that's like public domain and licensable and stuff like that. Mm. Theoretically, maybe though.
Yeah, like it's a slippery slope.
It's more just like it sounds great, but I just don't think there's a way to do it right now. Yeah. Right? You just need too much data to make an AI model that actually puts out anything usable.
I would just add to that. So I was talking to Ben Zhao about this, and it was like at some point maybe there might be an AI that's like Sam scans his data into his own. It's the Sam Tongue AI, mm-hmm. right? And only it's you, and it's a closed data loop set. It doesn't have it doesn't have any access to the internet, and it's only self-contained on his machine. He keeps it on a thumb drive, and nobody else has access to it. And then he uses it. Maybe at that point it becomes a tool, but still, it's very, 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 very limited, and it's not there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just...
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to add something. Ethical... Well, first of all, I think it's trusting of corporations that they won't fuck you over. Because they will, especially as someone who's been on strike for 5 months. The other thing will come to me later. Anyways.
You'll comment to it whenever you remember it. Don't worry about it. I remembered.
Hi, I wanted to start by saying this has been so educational. I took pictures of this, sharing with friends. It's going to be great. And to that end, it's kind of, this is where my question goes. I have a few friends who, at the start of all the AI that was coming out, they, either were on either sides of it. They took advantage of it or they didn't, right? A lot of my friends that I talk to now and we resonate closer to is like, F all this. This is so shitty. But there's still some folks who I don't know how best to communicate with them to show them all of this. And there's a lot of language that is like just hardline, like, I like it for this does this makes my job easier, blah, blah, blah. How best do you think we should go about like pulling them as laborers and as humans to this side of the conversation to be like, we're all in it together, this all kind of sucks, right?
So at least in entertainment, I wrote a white paper back in March, and I was talking specifically about cheating in the workplace, right? And so like, why do people cheat? Because they're overburdened, they feel like they gotta compete. And so I think a lot of people try to use AI as a shortcut, like, oh, we can just use it to like start out and then I can build on top of it. It's like, no, you're actually, you're increasing the race to the bottom with that, right? Because what you're doing is, if I'm a producer, my job is to save money on my show, right? And so if I can get one person to do the job of 2 people in half the time, then I'm gonna do that. So they're always going to do that because that's what they do. But at that situation, you have one artist and you have 3 people who are unemployed now. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to get a bigger paycheck. But they don't get rewarded with a bigger paycheck. They get rewarded with more work. And so they get more work, that becomes the expected norm, and then you have 3 people competing for that same job, which lowers the wages for everybody. So it's a downward spiral to the bottom. So.
Go ahead, Tiffy or Sam.
Sorry. I was going to say, you see it happen with the animation industry specifically a lot. Like for example, for board artists, right? Like board artists back in the day weren't in charge of doing stuff for animatics. Now they're expected to do creating animatics was like a real, like it was an animator's job. But now you don't really see that job anymore. It's just storyboard artists are expected to create that animatic and then it goes off to the editor, right? Like our jobs in general, even without AI, our jobs are already shrinking. So then when people feel like they need to take that shortcut, it's because of that. Like, for example, back in color design. So color design is actually the combination of a color modeler and ink and paint, right? So back in the day, ink and paint you have people who, you know, if you guys remember like cell animation and stuff, like they would have sketches and they would like paint the actual lines and stuff, and then that would go off to the ink department, where the ink department then picks swatches for what to color, what to paint each character, each frame, and then it goes off to the color modeler who does the actual painting, following the color stylist's choices. So, but now with color design, I don't do the black and white, that's the design department, but I do the color picking and I do the color painting. So again, it comes down to like our jobs are already shrinking. Our job responsibilities, like Dina said, it's shrinking. Like if they can get you to do it, if they can get you to the job of 2 people, they're gonna do it. And ultimately, so people are turning to AI with like, you know, because they're already overworked. There's already a lot of responsibilities. And I think to you, it's like, to tell those people that you are struggling to communicate with, it's like, do you feel like, I think a good way to talk to them is like, do you feel overworked? Why do you feel like you need to turn to AI to make your job easier?
Yeah.
You know, and to remind them that like, hey, yeah, sure, it's like, I know everyone's like, you know, we should all be hunky-dory with each other, like, oh, like, you know, you're getting rid of the jobs of like other people. But unfortunately, I've known of the world is you can always depend on people's selfishness, right? Like, so you need to kind of tell them in a way of like, think about yourself, think about the way that you've been overworked and why you feel like you need to use AI. Why do you feel like it's okay for you to use other people's stolen information?
Yeah, I think that's great, actually.
Yeah, this was actually the thing that I was thinking about, was just like, sorry, be talented. No, like you shouldn't steal, if you can't do it, don't use a computer to do it. Like, anyways, we have like 5 minutes, so. Sorry, be talented. I'm a bitch. Anyway.
I mean, you own it, queen behavior.
Kevin's like, sucks to suck.
Before I ask my question, he asked a couple questions ago, is it possible that it's a like pay-in? You can put your art in and get paid. I was waiting in line for the AI panel yesterday, and I was in line with a guy who is here from a startup, and that is their startup, and he's here doing research. So it is already like, there are already companies trying to trick us into, you know, getting paid to put our art in there. So there's that.
Yeah. They were here in the room today too. They just left.
Yeah, we were talking about it. but the thing you want to ask yourself is like, do you want to consign yourself to the Spotify model, right? Like, do you want to get paid pennies per image? Because that's what the Adobe stock people are getting paid, right? Do you want that? You don't.
Right.
So.
I
Remember,
agree.
getting paid a penny is still getting paid, y'all.
Oh, it's less than a penny. It's less than a penny. It's
Yeah,
like,
but I'd rather get paid my union rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. What I came up here for is, I guess, less of a question, more of a conversation starter. What I'm noticing now in terms of animation education is, for example, Art Center is teaching a prompt class, right?
Yeah.
And I mentor students who are trying to get into these colleges, and I told them about it, and they still want to apply to Art Center. Okay, cool. But it's not just Art Center. It's going to be everywhere, and it's not even just going to be universities, online schools. Like Sentient Academy supports AI and did a panel on AI. And it's scary because these kids are going to be educated with crutches, and they're not going to be able to do the job without the AI. So we're going to have a whole new generation of artists coming into the industry who can't actually do it without the scraping, the prompts. So I know I haven't heard the conversation about that, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on that whole, like the new generation who aren't going to be able to even do it.
So the first thing is, people need to remember every time you interact with an AI, it actually actively steals from you as you use it. So these schools are basically letting corporations steal from their students. So I don't think it's ethical for schools to advocate for their students to be stolen from, but I see the guy just gave us the time. But I would say the other thing is that funding for schools is definitely going to be drastically, I'm not sure what's going on with this. I would say, the other thing I would say is that funding for schools is definitely going to be drastically, if you have nobody that has a job, you're putting a larger burden of society on actually the back of the government. And the last time I checked, taxi drivers pay income taxes, but robots don't. So you're having less money going to the government, and so schools are not actually going to actually have funding that's required. So what you're going to end up with is, like, we've already had a generation of Zoom school. So you're going to have poor people that get robot teachers or Zoom school. You're going to have rich people who have human school. You're going to have poor people get robot lawyers, rich people get human lawyers. It's going to become Elysium. It's not going to become Star Trek. But that's what I would say. But I'm horrified when I hear that teachers are doing that, because they're actively promoting stealing from their students. It's awful.
If you're in a supervisor role, don't hire anyone who needs the AI to do the job. Tell your department, like, I don't want to see that in my department. Yeah.
I will say that as well, like, as an industry professional, right, we're all industry professionals here, or at least some of us are, it's like you can push back against that. We're not going to be hiring people who use those things, because those things are useless in production to us. So I think I feel like art schools always have had this problem where the education is always behind the actual industry. So that's the way that we can kind of combat it as like industry professionals. Like if you talk to, if you have friends who work in the industry, you can invite them to talks and like, hey, we're actually not hiring anybody who knows how to use AI because we don't need that. Nobody wants that. Even if you learn it because you need to graduate, sure, because funding for those schools is a whole different problem. All these tech companies are spending money to basically, hey, let us teach AI in your school, we give you this much money, right? That's what's happening. But I think as an industry, we can all push back together and say that we're not actually going to be hiring anybody who knows how to use these things, because we don't want that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for asking questions.